Well, welcome everybody. This is a interview for Montessori Everywhere Voices. I am Jeanne-Marie Penel, and I am joined by Lily and Shin. We are here with Ayize Sabater, who is going to be sharing his Montessori journey with us. And I just wanted to introduce him briefly, and Ayize, I hope that you can fill us in as well. But you have been in the educational field for many years as a researcher, as an author, 20 plus years as an educator. Most recently, the executive director of AMI USA, so Association Montessori International USA. And most importantly, the founder of the Black Montessori Education Fund. I also learned that you were presented by our First Lady Michelle Obama, the Excellence Award, which, wow, congratulations. So yes, we wanted to know more about you, and I will let Lily kind of take it over from here, and we'll just tag team and have a wonderful conversation. So thank you for being here.
Thank you both.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeanne-Marie, for that lovely introduction. And Ayize, we're so grateful to have you as our first guest in these series of interviews. So welcome. And you know, as Montessorians, this is a question I'm sure lots of us have been asked, but we were curious about your Montessori journey and how you found yourself involved in this work.
Yeah, so I think that I'm one of those who was fully immersed in the Montessori just interest, I guess, or the Montessori magic by my children. And so it was from my children that I fully realized, wow, Montessori is a powerful construct. And so coming out of undergrad, I was already exposed to the theoretical construct of, Montessori education. And I, along with a colleague of mine, we opened a early childhood school, and that was informed by Montessori. We had some Montessori aspects of it. It definitely wasn't a Montessori school. However, my colleague was a Montessori child, and so he definitely spoke of the power of the Montessori method. And so we definitely infused much of our early venture with Montessori aspects. Fast forward to moving to the DMV and meeting a beautiful woman who she herself was a Montessori educator. Along the way, she became a Montessorian, and she definitely spoke of the transformative power of Montessori. However, I don't know that I was fully aware of it until, my child being at a Montessori school that, my wife was teaching at, did a walkthrough and explained all that, he was immersed in, and I was bit with the bug. Definitely, yes.
That's wonderful. And so I would just like to piggyback on that of what is kind of your go-to simple, explanation of when people ask you, what is Montessori? These interviews, I am assuming people, know more or less of what is Montessori, but I always love to know, like, what is kind of your synopsis when people ask you, what is Montessori?
Yeah, so I think, my wife would definitely say Montessori is a way of life, right? It is a philosophical, a world view that you would do well to ground yourself in. Most folk, I would say, might understand Montessori as an educational approach that fully supports the whole child in ways that I haven't seen many other educational constructs do. So not only does it, really put the child in the driver's seat of the educational process. I've even heard someone's aptly put, Montessori is like common sense education, in that it supports the child's holistic developmental process. And so, when you see the children using their sense of taste or using the bells to develop their sense of sound, when you see them engaged in using practical life materials or engaged in, so many of the different materials, so the holistic development of the child and really follows a natural human development process. And so, again, when you see much research pointing to how the Montessori child has a heightened sense of, independence or self-initiative, or, they would talk of the high executive functioning, and so, again, many of these things, I think, the Montessori way of life or the educational construct helps to foster.
Thank you. I think that was a very succinct explanation. And I know it's a question that many of us have been asked, and it's often hard to know exactly where to start from. But I really love the perspective that it's a way of life beyond just a method of education. So thank you. Now, I understand that your wife and yourself co-founded the Black Montessori Education Fund, which I was really excited to see about when it was founded this summer, or last summer rather. And I was curious on your thoughts of how can we make Montessori education, whether it's school tuition for children or the tuition for teacher training programs, how can we make this more accessible to underserved communities?
Yeah, I definitely think that there are several things that we would need to do to really help to make it more accessible. One, I think we need to help bring awareness. And so having individuals even aware that there is a different way that actually might support your child's developmental process, as opposed to, one of the recent articles by Dr. Lillard and others looked at no excuse education compared to, Montessori education. And so again, you don't have to have your child drilled by a drill sergeant to feel that the educational process has to happen, right? And so one, I think helping with awareness. Two, I think then helping families to realize that the Montessori way of life does help to foster that child's development and does help to boost, so when children have a sense of, I can do it myself, right? That boosts their confidence, that boosts their awareness of their abilities. And so I think having families not only aware, but realizing how that helps to foster their child's development. Yeah, I think that's huge. And then thirdly, I would definitely say that we need to really work on the economic barrier that I see many folk experiencing. By and large, I would say here in the United States, Montessori has been really picked up by the well-to-do, and it has, particularly in the private sector, you have many well-meaning individuals. However, in some places, a Montessori education for, a primary, child 3 years old could cost what it might cost for somebody going to college. And so that economic factor is a barrier to many. And so we really have to also then tackle that barrier. And I appreciate what Dr. Mira Dibbs points out in her book, Diverse Families, Desirable Schools. She points out that in some, particularly within the Black community, that there are some who feel that they want their children to learn hardcore skills, and they are suspicious of the Montessori approach that allows the child to be in the driver's seat. And so that desire to really, that drill sergeant desire that some might have to make sure that their child, is achieving academically can be a impediment to allowing folk to not only trust the child, but to follow the child, right?
Yeah, and for me, I mean, you just kind of, it was my next question, but is this notion, like, do you think that we can ever come to a time where the Montessori approach to education, I mean, without even, some people don't like to use the word or whatever, but just the approach about, like you say, trusting the child and that the child is in the driver's seat. Do you ever foresee that it becomes kind of the way we educate children, that it could become the norm, as opposed to, like you say, this drill sergeant? Because I do feel that there's more and more an awareness of what children need, and that maybe, the way that we've set up the classrooms and kind of this more factory way and all that is outdated. But do you or have hope that the Montessori approach to education will one day kind of take over our educational system?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would have it as a hope,
Yeah.
no doubt. Yet I think that the push, the factory education industry would probably have serious pushback, because it could, no, not that it could, it would have dramatic implications for their methodology. Yet again, I definitely would put it as a hope, no doubt.
Because especially like with we recently saw the Bezos fund for wanting to create, Montessori inspired schools. So I feel like there is a movement towards making it more accessible, but I kind of have my theory on why it hasn't been more widespread. Do you have a sense as to why we haven't adopted it more, knowing that it is so powerful and so valuable?
Yeah, I don't know if it is the adult desire to really be controlling the educational process, as opposed to allowing, again, the child to direct it. And so I don't know if that whole notion that it needs to be following a particular method that is driven by the adult understanding. And so again, I think I think that is a huge impediment toward allowing, again, because there is a certain amount of faith and a certain amount of, yeah, you know, I'm rereading The Absorbent Mind, and there's a section where Dr. Montessori is talking about how children just, again, in their environment, absorb the language in that particular environment. And then she makes the point, and then after the child has absorbed, you know, literally she says, you know, it's thousands of words that the child has learned by the time the child is 3, and then they get sent to a school to learn their alphabet and learn, and she's like, what are you, you know, it's so mind-boggling that it's so counterintuitive to all that the child has you know, realized. And so again, you know, but is that the adult, you know, we got to sit down and make sure that they have, you know, the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, and the child is just, I mean,
Yeah, and I'll let Lily ask the next question, but for me, I just wanted to kind of bounce this idea off of you. I'm somewhat convinced that if Maria Montessori had been a man in that time period, there might have been a shift as to how we're going to educate children. And I've always wondered, like, you know, would have made a difference in how we educate children today had she, you know, not been Maria, but, you know, Mario and so forth, because it's just, you know, when you say it's a no nonsense education, like, so why aren't we, you know, educating all of the children this way? So yeah. All right, go ahead, Lily.
Well, first of all, that's a very interesting theory, and it definitely has me thinking. And, you know, I will say, as a Canadian who's newly immigrated to the United States, I feel a lot of hope in education here. Montessori being present in public schools, charter schools being developed, that's something we don't have back home at all. So I've been really excited about that prospect and seeing how this method, this way of life could be more widespread and more accessible. So I do see some hope there. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, no, and you know, it's interesting because I know even during Dr. Montessori's day that she was in discussion with several educational leaders in various countries about, you know, it being the national educational construct. And I just haven't done enough research to learn what happened that didn't happen in many places. Yes, I definitely know that it happened in Italy for a short period of time, yet I don't know what happened that it wasn't more of a long-standing just norm, as the question was stated. So yeah, I need to do more research on that. That's interesting.
Yeah, Italy, unfortunately, it was because Mussolini wanted to use it to not so good, and that's why she said no. But yeah, okay, Lily, your turn.
Okay, so as we know, we've all been living through a global pandemic, and you know, an increasingly digital world that I think the pandemic has even stretched to further limits. You know, in a perfect world, we might be doing this interview in person, but here we are on Zoom, and you know, the classroom, the workplace have had to adapt to these online formats. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on how we can embrace these changes as we continue to move forward, and what challenges do you anticipate?
So I think from my vantage point, there are some pros and some cons. Let me say it as such. I think that many have talked about families being a part of the educational process. However, many have just given lip service to it. And now, with the advent of the pandemic and families being more engaged because children are at home, so families are being relied upon in ways that they have never been relied upon before. And so the pro in that is that I perceive that there are more collaborative efforts happening between the educator, the traditional educator, and the family educator. And for families to be more engaged, to be more in partnership, to be more involved in their children's education, I think that can have a long-term effect. I mean, I think that's a huge upside. I think on the downside, having to reimagine, and again, Montessori is so hands-on, so using manipulatives, using so having to reimagine how you convey some of those lessons that have been taught for over a century in this virtual way. I'm sure it has posed some serious challenges, as well as even adults who are being educated in training centers now having to use this virtual construct. I think it poses challenges there also. And so I guess I would give a little on both sides. Yeah.
Thank you. And just to jump off that a little bit more, do you think there is a place for technology in our work with children, and I guess particularly in Montessori spaces? And in addition to that, how do we guide children to use technology responsibly?
Yeah, I know for many within the Montessori arena, that is almost like a taboo. Yet I think that is one of the things also that this pandemic has forced Montessorians to have to reckon with. And I don't know if we have looked at all of the ways in which children might be able to use it in a way that does benefit the child. And I think, definitely parents using some of the technological controls to try to put some guardrails in place for for younger children, but then, having conversations with the children around, how you might be responsible as a user, again, making sure that it's age appropriate. I think helping them to also be able to critically assess which sites might be providing information that might not be the case, or being able to critically examine the content that is being conveyed. And so I think that I think that is something that within the Montessori world, we would do well to really examine how to utilize technology in a more robust way that might help children, particularly now, given the whole virtual reality that we are increasingly in having to use.
Yeah, no, very good point. I just worry that that we might use it a little too early. So I'm like, if we could wait till after primary, I would be, except if we're in a global pandemic, sure, I understand. But, it's just knowing all the research of, the effects it has on the brain. It's true that I worry that, we're going to kind of let go of that, like you say, that taboo that we have of, please no screen. Uh, so fascinating. So in our Montessori training, we often talk about the spiritual preparation of the adult, and how we need to prepare ourselves to be in the presence of children. And we would love to know from you, how do you define that? And maybe on a personal level, what has been kind of your journey to be that prepared adults to be in the presence of children, and also working with other adults as you do?
So for myself, as a spiritually grounded person, I greatly appreciate how Dr. Montessori has developed a system that centralizes the spiritual unfolding of each individual. And, I remember when I was taking the orientation, that was the assistance thing back then, we call it the orientation now. I was blown away reading some of Dr. Montessori's work, where she literally is saying, the child is, you need to look at the child as divine. You need to look at the child as, imagine, the child as the Christ, and how are you going to be in service of, and it, so to have the divine centered in the educational system, I was blown away. Particularly as a product of public school myself, K-12, where there is the whole separation between church and state, and even later on, and they take even prayer out of the school, where Dr. Montessori has it centralized in the educational system. I think it is profound, and again, I think that speaks to that whole development of, and so it's not just the academic, the intellectual, but we would do well to give thought to the mental, to the spiritual. And, and so again, I think that that's that whole person, that whole child development that is truly phenomenal, I think. And for myself, I think that some of my spiritual practices have helped me to try to allow that divine to move through my life. And so, whether it's through prayer, through meditation, whether it's, reading those holy texts that I understand to help me, again, just tap into the divine that's moving through each of us, is how I might put it. And encouraging others to use those spiritual tools and resources so that they might be able to reflect, to tap in, to ground themselves, and work then and be in service of the child because of that. I don't know. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, and I will ask more of a clarifying question. So for those who might not know what this is about, like we're three people, we're trained, we know, we're kind of using this kind of jargon, but how would you define that? What is a prepared adult? How would you define that for somebody who might be looking into maybe training to be a Montessori guide, or a parent who is interested in Montessori education? Like, how would you define being a prepared adult?
So I think that being a prepared adult is one that is open to the learning process themselves and able to trust the developmental process that is unfolding, and understanding that it might not be exactly as it has been carried out by another child. And so again, allowing that child, and so having that I don't know if I want to say confidence, that belief, right? And so, definitely being grounded in the Montessori principles, the understanding that, the human tendencies. And so again, having an awareness of these foundational principles, yet also able to be in awe, in awe of how that miraculous development is happening before you, and looking to not force your way of understanding and your way of being, but again, and even as I say this, as I reflect on my interaction, even with my children, that isn't always how I've been, and it's a work in progress. Yet, I think realizing that we are in the unfolding and looking to honor the child, looking to respect and allow that unfolding to happen, I think would be some of the things that I would put. Yeah,
beautiful. Thank you for that. For me, I just, when you were sharing, I was thinking back, like the big kind of aha for me was to see the child as a new child each and every day. That they're really in this time. Well, I worked only with younger children, but that they're in this constant, transformation, and that we can't take anything personally. Like, it's really about trusting this amazing development from this divine being, that's happening in front of us. And beautiful. Thank you.
And
Lily?
Just to piggyback on what you said, and Ayize, when you were talking about this unfolding and allowing that to happen, it really had me thinking about what we need to do to prepare ourselves to be present, but also to retain an incredible amount of self-awareness, so that we can be present for the child every day and allow whatever's happening to happen. So thank you both for your thoughts there. Now, in addition to Dr. Montessori talking about the reverence we need to have for the child, she really saw the child as hope for humanity and for a more peaceful world. And the Montessori method is often referred to as peace education, or education that can lead us to world peace. Can you speak to that a little bit and address how we might find ourselves there through Montessori?
Yeah, I think given all that Dr. Montessori experienced, and so again, when we talk of, her being run out of Italy by Mussolini, or, some of the efforts there being dislocated from place because of world wars happening, and really being in tune with the need for a better way to happen, right? Like, surely, we who consider ourselves to be advanced, we don't have to, destroy the world for our existence. And so I think that within the Montessori approach, having the children to understand the respect for life, the respect and care for the materials, the grace and courtesy and how we interact with one another, I think helps to, in a minute to minute, day to day, functional way, have folk to understand that a different way is possible. And so I definitely believe that having children, having students to practice these principles can help to lead to a more harmonious, and I think that's why you would find folk picking up on the Montessori approach, whether in UNESCO or other, because they see that type of respect and, harmonious existence, yet somehow, I don't know if there's the systems that be just continue to cling to power, and so whether, yeah, it's a difficult thing to see how that transformation is going to happen on a global scale when you see those entrenched interests around, power and control. Yeah.
We have a lot of work to do, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And on that note, I would love to know more about your work with the Black Montessori Educational Fund that you created, that we talked a lot about around the 150th birthday this summer. And just what is your vision? What and how can we be of support? And for me, it's really kind of also just for us, the prepared adults working in the Montessori communities, is how can we be more supportive, more diverse, more inclusive? Because I know that it hasn't always been that way, and I have hope that we can change that. So yes.
Yeah, no. Again, the Montessori Everywhere team has been so supportive, so encouraging in the efforts for the Black Montessori Education Fund, the BMEF. And so we have already been tremendously blessed by Montessori Everywhere. And so, whoever you are, wherever you are, hear us saying thank you, thank you, thank you. Montessori Everywhere has been phenomenal to the BMEF. And yeah, I know for myself this summer, just experiencing some of the racial trauma that continues to cause great harm within, certain communities, helped me to realize the vision of how to bring some healing to some of these same communities that are experiencing some of this great harm. And so understanding the power of the Montessori educational approach or the Montessori way of life helped me to say, okay, maybe I can try to help more individuals become introduced, to try to, if not totally remove the economic barrier that might be impeding or a hiccup for many. So how can we just harness our resources, harness our goodwill, harness our interest in trying to not only give greater access, but also just a better way as an opportunity for others. And so, you know, that's basically the idea for the Black Montessori Education Fund, is to bring more resources to a community that historically has not been has not had as much access to the Montessori educational approach. And so that's primarily the impetus. And so, yeah, I mean, if individuals are interested, I would definitely direct them to the, Black Montessori Education Fund .org website to get more information. We definitely want to help more individuals from the Black community to become Montessori guides, to become families to be able to have their children in Montessori environments, more, Montessorians who from the Black community who are becoming trainers of future teachers. And so on multiple levels, we definitely want, to have more folk engaged. And that's basically the vision for the, BMEF.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Yes, because it's for me, I had understood that it was mainly for adults to get into the training, but I see that it's much broader than that. So wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Lily, do you have?
Well, I just think the work you're doing with the BMEF is absolutely fantastic. And, coming from a 0 to 3 background, I see how important it is for young children to see themselves represented. So the idea of, training more adults to be guides that might have not had that opportunity otherwise is, I think, just so important. And, on this topic, for those adults, whether Montessori guides or parents or those just sort of dipping their toes into this world, how can we create spaces for children that are more diverse, more equitable, more inclusive? Do you have any suggestions for those that are just kind of embarking upon this work?
Yeah, and also if I could go back for a moment. So not only are we looking to get more on multiple levels of Montessori, we actually even want to help to support folk who want to even start up their Montessori school. And so helping again, so that we might be able to bring Montessori to those communities where it might not have existed before, as well as even trying to get more individuals from the Black community to even engage in research to explore how the Montessori lived experience might be impacting. And so, yes, on different levels, we are definitely looking to engage. And I think that efforts like the BMEF, there is an effort that was recently launched.
We've lost your camera. Something happened. He disappeared.
Yep.
Okay. Hopefully he's
Oh, did it cut out?
there. You disappeared there for a while.
You're back now.
Okay. Excuse me. So I think that the effort to go ahead and have more diverse communities involved, I think that is something, so whether it is colleagues of mine from the indigenous community that recently started the Indigenous Montessori Institute, whether it is individuals, from different backgrounds, I think we would do well to support those efforts so that those folk from different, whether it's ethnic, whether it is, from diverse communities, so that they might be empowered and supported and having resources so that they can then bring this approach to their community, then I think that's how we will diversify and open up access, is to help empower folk from those communities so that they are using it as a vehicle to help more in their community to be exposed.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And just to just to push that a little bit more, for those who are already in the classroom, who might not be in very diverse communities, like I taught in a very, wealthy white school, and there was no diversity. How do we bring that in with the fact that it's not part of that school culture? How do we as the prepared adults bring that in to bring awareness to all the children that are in our care?
Yeah, I think in those settings, then one, for example, there was just a whole big, I don't know if I want to say kerfuffle, whole big commotion around the Utah Montessori school that sought to opt out of Black history. And their rationale was, we only have like maybe one or two Black families here. And so the majority of the folk are, not even Black. So why even do that? However, helping to tell, again, the whole story, even if you only have white children, helping folk to understand the nuances of everybody's story. It's almost like folks say a rising tide rises all boats, right? And so everybody understanding the stories, the various stories, that improves the existence for us all. So there's that. Second, when folk go out into the world is very diverse. Not even the world. I mean, even the United States is pretty diverse. And so I would encourage schools that if the school has primarily wealthy, primarily, white population, that if that is not representative of your demographic, then what can you do to provide scholarships and opportunities for that diversity to come to your school? So I'm presuming that was a private school that you spoke of. And so if that is a private school, then what can they do to be able to offer scholarships to diverse individuals, which then means that if you were even going to attract those diverse individuals, you are going to have to help them to understand the Montessori approach. You're going to have to go to where they are. And so what type of outreach and what is the will to go ahead and have this intentionally be a representation of even the area in which we are living, so that, again, everyone's story can be appreciated at the table? I think those might be some ways I would suggest.
Yes, definitely. I agree 100%. Thank you for that.
Yeah, some really wonderful suggestions in there. And, I can relate to Jeanne Marie, as I've worked at schools that are private schools in predominantly white neighborhoods. And then I've worked at schools that are much more ethnically diverse. So as you said before in this conversation, we definitely have our work cut out for us.
Yes. Yeah, yet again, I think that with the awakening that has happened because of, again, the right in your face and repeated, it's just, that's what I think it just hit folks so hard, at least when I was growing up. We had the big, if I could, kerfuffle, or the big uproar when, Rodney King was beat on, and it was videotaped. Yet we didn't see another videotape of something like that happening a few months before or a few months after. But this particular summer, and even before the summer, you had Ahmaud Arbery, assassinated. You had Breonna Taylor in her bed. Then you had, and some of these were, videotape clips. People being able to see it in live time, I think helped to pull the wool off of many folks' eyes to realize, wow, this is still something that is hitting people over the head today. And then, in fact, if I even go back before Rodney King to maybe my parents' generation, police brutality was so front and center, so much so that if you read the Black Panther Party, one of their 10-point platforms, in fact, I think their second platform point was on stop police brutality in our community. And so again, this is not a new phenomenon, but because of the advent of technology that has this right in your face, and you're seeing this happen over and over again, I think that has shaken the world and caused folk to really cry out for something better.
Definitely. And just how we all need to work, like that it's not, there's no pointing fingers anymore. This is our human existence, our human community, and yes, beautiful. Well, this has been delightful, Ayize, and I would love if you have just any parting words, any words that you want to share with those listening to this interview about Montessori, about the future of Montessori today.
Well, if I could just go back for one moment. So again, that's why
Please.
for myself, I'm encouraged when I see many of the human family in an uproar because of the recent killings of, our Asian brothers and sisters. And so, to see folk trying to rally to see that we have a different way of operating and of living together. And so that is encouraging. And so what I would, just leave folk with is, again, I truly believe that the Montessori approach is a way of living that can help our existence to be more humane, right? To be one that is more respectful, one that is more appreciating the value of existence, of the value of one another. And I am excited for the opportunity to help to bring Montessori to areas where it has not been introduced, or folk have not appreciated, folk have not maybe seen the power in the method. And so I think it does have a tremendous, we have a tremendous opportunity before us. It is a tremendous work, yet I believe that we have what it is that we need within our hands to go ahead and advance it. So I'm saying upward, onward, let's go.
Beautiful. Thank you for those words of encouragement and so much hope for a better tomorrow. So thank you.
Yes. No, thank you both for taking time and embarking upon, I think this, again, Montessori Everywhere is a tremendous construct that we might help to bring Montessori everywhere. And, capturing these Montessori voices. I applaud you all and thank you for embarking upon this effort.